Hey, welcome everybody to episode 4 of the Archivist with my special guest Paul Cook. Paul, thanks for being here.
No,
Welcome.
mate, thank you for having me, mate. Thank you very much. It's an honour.
Thanks. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Most of the people here are aware of you, but if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give us a quick little introduction into who you are. You know, what makes you tick, and what led you to creating your channel and exploring the hidden grottos of the UK.
The Subterranean, Monda.
Yeah.
Where did it start? To be honest with you, mate, it all started when I went to Malta. Obviously, my whole life I've been not involved, but I've always, with different eyes, shall we say, what's the word I'm looking for? Less knowledgeable eyes. I've always looked at ancient sites, but it's not when I went to Malta. I realised something was completely wrong. I like to do a lot of research, so I'm researching a place before I go there, and then when I get to the place, like one of the temples, it's not what we're told. And I started looking at all the stuff. Before that, I was a plumber, by the way. This is quite a big part of it. So I do building services and building work and bits like that. So I have like 12 to 15 years experience in that, and I've took that sort of experience and knowledge, and for some reason I've mixed it into like a geologist, a historian, an archaeologist. So I've rolled it all into one. So I've been going around exploring ancient sites, and I spent a lot of time underground exploring ancient sites in Malta, and that's where I sort of done my my groundwork, and that's where I built up all the not all the knowledge, like I'm a woo, but the knowledge that I have. I gained it all in Malta, and due to the pandemic, I had to leave that place and come back. But I had a wealth of knowledge of these ancient sites, and I thought, hang on, let me apply what I know to England. And as soon as I started applying that, I started coming across things that people had never even seen or heard of. And like it's one of my sayings, it only knocks your socks off. So with that being said, I noticed a couple of things that are just phenomenal. One of them is a lot of ancient stuff in England is buried. It'll be buried in, it's either been dismantled, by the way, so there'll be nothing there, or it's been quarried out, or it's buried underneath a golf course or a campsite or under a nature reserve. And another thing I've noticed, that these places, most of the coastlines I've examined, because I've actually went around the southeast coast where I live, and I've probably mapped out about probably about 70 miles of coastline. And people are going to think I'm cracker saying this, but it seems to be, in my opinion, block work. And even like, so when I noticed all that, I thought, well, hang on a minute, if this is block work here, what's going on inside? So I started doing tours of places, and I noticed that, so let's just take Thanet in Kent, for example. That's an island off of Kent. Now, I believe that's a man-made island because when you go around the whole of the outside of the shoreline, it's all block work, and I'll show you the pictures of that. I'll have all the pictures of that. And like I said, I wanted to know what was going on behind the blocks. So I started looking at tours and underground shelters and things like that. And then when you're in there, it's exactly the same. It's all the block work. So I am sitting there thinking, blinking hell, what's going on here? This is like a buried structure. And they've just built that out the world that we live on directly on top of it. And it seems like they've dismantled and damaged all the cliffs to make it look natural.
Yeah.
I know people are going to think I'm cracker saying this, but once you've seen the evidence I've collected, it's up to you guys to think what you want. But in my opinion, it's undisputable.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I mean, some of the ideas that I throw around, talking about the whole of the Yucatan and the whole of Florida, showing pretty amazing evidence of being man-made, and they're finding Kakina style constructions, and because the way that Kakina was done in especially the southern states was it doesn't really look like block work because of how it hardens slowly. It looks like one giant conglomerate. but the forts made with coquina and some of the buildings made with coquina show very much a identical resemblance to parts of Ireland, islands off of the coast, islands off the coast of Scotland. Gotland looks just like Florida, like the construction, the shell work. It looks the type of they're using, and then the Yucatan. And then there's islands I know. There's an island, I'm spacing the name of it. Wilhelm, right, owned it, and then they took it over during World War One. Um, but the whole island looked man-made, and there was a news report in the newspapers that showed the whole island was completely hollow. And get this, it had a revolving, spinning elevator that could hold a Zeppelin. World War One. What kind of crazy advanced construction, are they?
Wow.
This whole thing was the whole island, even though from the outside, like you're describing, it looked just beaten by the weather. And, it's amazing what the ocean can do. So you take
Mhm.
an island that maybe 1,000 years ago looked very obviously like a man-made construction, and then you don't take care of it and it looks dilapidated, looks organic, right? Kind of what you're saying.
And that's very similar because I've noticed loads of little tricks that they try. So I've noticed that especially in Kent, they like to pour concrete down the block, down the cliffs,
Yeah,
and that gives it an effect like it's a completely different stone when really it's like chalk. But they're giving it some concrete effect. Now, when I looked into it, they were saying that was only done to stop bits of blocks falling off.
right.
But when you look at it, it's
Safety. Yeah,
like nothing's falling down.
yeah,
Like they've
yeah.
been hitting these things with bombs and shells of all sorts of stuff.
Right,
But
right.
let me show you because like you said, like if it's block work at the front, then it should be block work all the way through, and that's what I found. Like when I was going in some of the tours, I went into one place and it's called Margate Caves, and when I went in there, like it was an underground, it was like a massive cave complex,
Mhm.
all done in this same chalk.
Right,
And
right, yeah.
when and there was this massive wall there, like just complete ancient wall directly in front of me, and I've got a picture of it. I'll show you in a sec. And I said to the tour guide, I went, mate, what's going on with this wall? Because this looks like it's like a wall. And he went, yeah, it is a wall. He goes, we don't know how we've done it. We lost we lost the knowledge. And I thought, oh my God. I was trying to look for that video because I had him on video saying this. But what he did there, saying that, he literally admitted that inside was a proper wall. And with that, I thought, well, hang on a minute, that means all of it is. So if this part inside underground is a proper wall, then why is not the rest of it? Why is the coastline not the same? Because they look the same. But I'm going to show you these images now,
Yeah.
Ben, if you don't mind.
Yeah, do you now how do you feel about some of that? Like, obviously going through all the articles like I do, I find a lot of plaster. I
Mm-hmm.
find these similar layers. Like in Mexico, there are several mountains. There's one article I'm thinking of off the top of my head, and they called it the chalk layer. They said that the mountain was only inhabited in the chalk layer, and I think it's kind of similar to what you're saying. And
Mm-hmm.
and there were over 300 houses in the chalk layer. They found
Wow.
over 100 mummies, and they said that all the rooms were perfectly straight, perfectly level, super advanced engineering, but built into the one specific layer. And then they said all of it was plastered on the inside. Do you think that's because it would wear away over time, like, or to keep the substance from degrading, or
Yeah.
is
Well,
that kind of what you're thinking?
yeah, well, I'm discovering this as I go along, because I'm noticing a lot of places that I've gone into. It's a very complex subject because there's so many different
Right, of course.
routes coming off this.
Yeah,
So when I say one thing, it don't account for everything.
of
It's
course, of
accounting
course.
for
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
But one thing I will say is that I'm noticing an extra layer on top of the red sandstone. That's one thing I've been noticing.
Okay.
I don't know what that material is, but because obviously my hands can't tell what it is. Like it needs to go under some sort of scope or something,
Of course.
and to see if there's any inorganic materials in it, which I bet there is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, and of course, you're to save face. Everywhere is different because they utilize whatever materials, whatever substance, but they seem to be choosing the layer that is often the easiest for them to create these structures in, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I call this the golden layer. I call it the golden layer.
The golden layer. Okay.
Because that's where you find everything. Like you were saying, you find complexes in there. You find routes for transport in there, and you think, well, hang on a minute, because some of these tunnels, you can drive a lorry down some of them, you know, and you think, why is it so big? Like, why would it be so big if you just got a couple of 6-foot guys going down there, you know?
Yeah, of course.
But going back to the stuff on the wall, I have noticed underground in the complexes that there has been a mix. I call it, it's a kind of terrazzo, which is a decorative render for internal purposes, you know?
Yeah.
So I've noticed that has been abundant everywhere underground. Abundant. Obviously, in different areas, it's different materials, but there's this layer that's going on in front. I've got some images of it on this laptop as well. But in some place, this is what I go out looking for, because they leave all these crumbs. I call them crumbs. They leave them on the walls, you know.
Yeah.
They leave them, I'll show you an image later.
I think, sorry to cut you off. I think one of the most important things for me with your research is, you know, they often talk about, well, this stone had to come from this quarry, and this, you know, this had to come from here. And I think all that's nonsense. And everyone kind of felt like that was nonsense. And the geopolymer, using what they had in front of them, is obviously Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation often is going to be the right one. And it seems like your research continually keeps pointing to Occam's razor, Occam's razor. They're using what they had. They're using what's in front of them, not bringing all this stuff from hundreds of miles away.
No, unless it's superior to what they're doing. I mean, I believe in. I'm not too clever when it comes to Egypt, but how far is the Aswan quarry to where they make?
Oh yeah, I don't. I see. I think the pyramids were 3D printed using a similar idea to what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Because when you look at the, you know, structural engineers will say the same thing, that when you're dealing with that level of architecture and the degrees, we couldn't build a structure that large today and have it be within, you know, half a degree of the base. It's impossible. And the only structures we can do that with today, and I was actually just watching before I went to bed last night, I was watching there's a development in Texas where they're building all the houses with giant 3D printers.
What, concrete?
With concrete. Yeah. And it just reminded me of our talk today. I was like, man, this is something I should mention. And you can just imagine, you know, you have a structure that follows the edges of the pyramid on all four sides and just slowly works up with it. And they're using the substances around them. Right? They're not cutting these blocks, dragging these blocks. I mean, obviously people have thought that was nonsense for, you know, millennia, but it's becoming more evident with, I think, the work you're doing, obviously. And like you've said, and we've said on previous talks, is that it gets more advanced, more complex, and more ancient the deeper you go. You know, the Cyclopean stuff is at the bottom.
Yeah. And also, I've just done a video the other day, pardon me, and it was, pardon me, sorry. And it was about South America. And the main part of that video was a independent group of people from a private group of people from 2 universities, one in Peru and one in Paris. So these people got together from these 2 universities and went and done lab analysis tests on the rocks in South America. And they found inorganic material. They was finding carbon inside the andesite blocks, which is impossible because
that's not natural stone. They made it
volcanic rock. So there's no way in any way in this world that other material will be in there, because it'd be vaporized, you know. So there's no way carbon could be in there. So that had to have been added at a later date. And even when you look at the sandstone blocks, they were finding, I can't remember the materials in there. There was 5 different materials inside the sandstone, and they were coming from different parts, not from where they were. And you think, well, this has. And another thing, I'm not too keen when it comes to carbon dating, because I don't trust it. But well, not that I don't trust it. It's just something I'll just leave it. I don't really look into that much. But they said they carbon dated it because they found carbon stuff inside the stones, and it's 1,400 years old.
Yeah, there's no way.
So, and you know,
you got to trust your gut. I mean, I think you and I have looked at enough of these, and you can see aging.
Yeah.
like incredible aging. It's like some of these old stone buildings, and I'm sure England has way more. But here in America, there's a few. Every state has 3 or 4 good, really old stone buildings, and when you look at pictures of them from the 1800s, they look like they've been there for 500 years.
Mm.
And I'm sure
Mhm.
England obviously is a lot different because America was devastated, and a huge chunk of the country was buried. I mean, they found a city in Missouri 300 feet below a lava flow.
That's just unbelievable. I believe you. I believe you,
Yeah,
but it's hard to fathom, isn't it? It really
isn't it?
is
Yeah,
hard
they
to
were
fathom.
digging coal shafts looking for big, in looking for big layers of coal,
Yeah.
and they were using these huge bits, like 2 feet diameter, 3 feet diameter bits, and the bit just fell through. All of a sudden, it lost pressure, and they weren't having to push; it just went into something.
Mm.
Well, they sent down 2 dudes, and the story they told was unbelievable. I mean, they're walking down paved stone cities with a flowing fountain. The fountain's still flowing,
Mate, mate,
and
mate, you always knock my socks off with these stories, mate. I'll tell you.
I'll have to bring that one up. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyways, I keep jumping in front of you there. But yeah, England is a crazy place. I mean, your videos have blown my mind because it's just obviously like we were talking before we got on air. England blocks their public records from outsiders for the most part. I can't go on your public forums and look at your archives. I have to get like a VPN, like I was telling you.
Hmm.
So I have to rely on what little bit of information was written in American newspapers. And it's crazy. The little good nuggets that I get here, your videos are like the photographic and video evidence with boots on the ground. Like, I think this is what the whole world looks like.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Mate, I'm the same. And if it don't look like that, that's only because it's been buried or it's literally just been built, you know. But if you
Yeah,
start examining the old world, it's scary, really, because it makes you realise every single thing that we know or have been taught or is being taught right now is false. You know,
yeah,
it really is. Like I don't want to put anything down, but the geology side of things, it don't add up. It really
yeah,
don't add up when you start looking at like striation marks and joint marks and how these are formed and the stories behind it and how they go back millions and hundreds of millions of years, and you just think I never sort of believed it anyway. And again, I
yeah.
don't really look into things that I'm not really a believer of, you know.
Oh,
But
100%. Yeah, it's funny as you get older, things don't get older, they get younger. Is it,
yeah,
like when you start to like ask yourself the real questions about history and timelines and yeah, no, millions of years just seems completely outlandish to me.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, what is a dinosaur? I think that's a kind of a slippery slope of a word, but there were the Duke of Westminster, okay, your neck of the woods. He took a boat to Alaska. Now imagine how long of a journey that is, right?
yeah.
In the 1800s. Where this isn't a story from the 1800s. And he went hunting what they called a furry dinosaur in Alaska. This was a 70, 80-foot long lizard covered in hair that they saw carrying live caribou in its mouth. Caribou's 800, 900 pounds. These things were still alive in the 1800s. And these royalty types, the Royal Society, the Smithsonian, which are partner companies, um, they were offering bounties for these creatures in the 1800s. In fact, the largest bounty I ever found was the Smithsonian in the 1919, okay, before World War One, offered a $5 million bounty. How much is $5 million in 1919
A lot.
for a lizard in the Congo?
So do you reckon this was just to get all of this out of the
Yeah,
way,
for sure.
bury it, take it out of history? Yeah.
Yeah, and these people that these big game hunters, they were people from big families, with a lot of money, no job, and looking to explore the things that me and you talk about. But like to them, it wasn't hidden history. It was just kind of a good kept secret. right?
Yeah.
And sorry, again, off topic there, but yeah, it just kind of bring in the whole concept of it was only a few hundred years ago that this was an openly discussed subject in
Yeah.
England, in America, all around the world, and they were just uncovering these things. And like you said, they either kept it buried, dismantled it, or kept it under lock and key, right? Or
Hmm.
they haven't even found it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I was saying to you off camera, like there's a new website that's been generated by the Direct Gov in England, which is an official government site. And when I was looking at it about a week ago, they were literally telling you that there's ancient sites that they're going to start mapping out across England. And I thought, hang on a minute, how comes you're saying this now? Like, I've been doing this for like 2 years, nearly 2 years in England, and I've been doing it for 2 years in Malta prior to that. I'm not too worried about the Malta side of things. It's more like the English side of things, because I thought no one's really ever spoke of it over in England. And then what they've done is, in my opinion, I believe they're going to collect the locations of these sites, because they've gone and made a Twitter account up. The government have made a Twitter account up, right, where you can go and send locations and images of the places that you find. And when I heard this, I thought, you cheeky gits, because in my heart, I know what's going to happen. These places will be vandalised or damaged or buried within a couple of years. So they're literally going to go around and let everyone find all this stuff, or the people that are actively out looking for it, let them do the dirty work, and then they'll just go and bury it once that site hits the Twitter account,
Yeah.
Or maybe wait, let the dust settle a little bit, and then they'll go and damage it, block it up, bury it, whatever they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you see the story with these caves. A lot of the really, really, really crazy big caves in America, they either went into private hands, mining companies, or they became parks, and then the park closes off 90% of the cave because of safety.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely like you were mentioning earlier. That they're cementing things to keep it safe, but the reality is these things are giant islands. They're not going anywhere, and that seems to be the narrative. As you've seen things blocked off underground, that's what happens here. And yeah, some of these caves are incredible. I mean, we're talking cities, streets, 90-degree right angles, perfectly paved roads, streams that you could take, rivers that you could take, for 20 miles or more. And I think is probably a similar thing, as you've shown a lot of these underground streams and rivers.
This is a whole new topic, that is, on its own, like the water underground. I mean, I'm not saying this to blow my own trumpet at all, just to let people that know that I went under Bristol on a canal, and
Yeah.
the tunnels were meant to be 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
And you can see the old block work, you can see tunnels coming into it, and this is all done underneath the city. And you think, well, hang on a minute, like it just goes to show like how everything has been fabricated. But then again, I went into one in Dudley. The one in Dudley went underneath. It went under a coal mine, under a gold mine, under a cemetery, and then under the town city. And this is on a boat, and I'm on a boat, and this is not a little boat either, by the way. This is a humongous tour boat.
Yeah.
It's got about 70 people on it, and it's got like a skipper at the front.
Right.
And these tunnels, like underground, going underneath, are humongous. I'm telling you, they are.
Yeah, and the amount of labor
exactly
to build these.
Yeah, and then it's just been built on top of it.
Right.
It's just.
So what came first, the tunnel or the gold mine? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the narrative will be, well, they built the tunnel under this for X, Y, and Z, but judging by what we were just talking about, the time frame stuff, you can't trust any of the time frames.
No.
And I keep going back to the labor thing. The time frames they often give, especially in America. I know England, because England has such a deeper history, pre late 1700s, there wasn't a lot of advanced construction. And so when you come across something incredibly advanced in America, that's buried, that they flat out in the papers were saying, well, we don't know what the hell this is. We don't have an explanation. Yeah. Rebury it. Yeah, you never hear about it again. Or the quote often, you wouldn't believe how many stories end with, the Smithsonian has been notified and they're sending a representative. That is like, that happens all the time.
Mm.
And often the aborigines of the area have no clue. Either no clue it was there or no clue who built it. And they always had kind of a superstition with these ancient ruins, that they didn't touch them. It was like a sacred place or an evil place. Bad spirits were there. Something bad happened, and they never touched it. And the Indians or Aborigines would often know about these cave systems, and the same thing. Caves were sacred, and they didn't mess around with them. So it's like, it wasn't until mid 1800s that a lot of this stuff was even being explored. So in England, that's what makes England so special, is that you have 500, 600, 700, 800 years of pretty well written history, maybe not that long, but yeah, and then there's still no explanation for a lot of this, and the explanations that it give, right, are pretty silly.
They're a joke, they're an absolute joke. Some of them. I mean, a lot of the stories I hear about when I go to like take the Williamson tunnels, for instance, in
Right.
Liverpool, in England. There's a network of tunnels, but they're more like water galleries, chambers, tunnels, dwellings, and in my opinion, I'm going to say my opinion because I don't want to sit and go, this is what it is. But in my opinion, that's part of it's in the golden layer that we talk about, and it's part of a massive subterranean. I don't know if it was subterranean before, but it's now subterranean. It's obviously been buried, but it's been broken up into 3 different tourist sites. Just this one network of tunnels,
Right. Yeah.
And then if you go to the graveyard in Liverpool, outside the cathedral, there's a massive indentation in the ground, like a humongous park, but lower than the ground level. I think it's about. Oh, hang on a minute, sorry, mate. I think it's about 12 to 15 meters lower than the current ground level up there. But when you go down there, it's all geopolymer, all on the walls. It's all of this layer that we've been talking about as well. And there is so many entrances coming off this recess in there, and it can only seem to me like it's done for transport. It's like humongous transport tunnels. And you think, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? If this cathedral was only built like in 1913 or something like that, why have you got this like train station looking complex underneath it?
Open. Yeah. Who are they transporting there?
Exactly. And not only that, you've got there's a couple of other parks in Liverpool as well that have got some mad sandstone stuff in it. There's a lot and some houses are built directly on top of this sandstone. They haven't dug into it to put foundations in. They've literally chopped down the sandstone because you can see it going like that, and then they've just put the blocks on top and started building up. Oh. So you think, what is going on there? That's just like it's madness.
Yeah, and it reminds me of stories about Paris and London that they were finding tunnels that the authority had no idea were even there.
Yeah.
And that's the same with New York. In New York, when they were building some of the early skyscrapers, they had to touch bedrock for foundation. So they're drilling these huge pylons down, and they found an ancient subway tunnel. It's like, how do you guys are building these giant buildings, but you have no idea what tunnels are below you?
Yeah, it's crazy.
How does that make any sense? And then in more than one instance in New York alone, they found 3 or 4 large boats, 50 to 100 feet long, buried 2-3 stories below ground. So going with what you're saying, we're dealing with the maritime people, right? These tunnels, as you were describing, often are used for shipping, and boats are involved, and they're finding boats buried. So, like, what came first? Was that ground level? Was that sea level? How are boats getting buried?
This is one thing I wanted to mention earlier when I was talking about the tunnels in Dudley and Bristol and in London, because let's be real about this. For that to happen, right? This is the building mind. You'd have to block off part of the river,
right?
Yeah, and then do the work,
right?
Do you get what I'm saying? So you're gonna
Which is no easy thing.
Exactly. Like, imagine trying to do that. Imagine stopping a river, building up some sort of just some sort of shutter or something to stop the water coming down the canal path that you're creating.
Right.
Like it's just, and then there's just so much going into it. It's just, and then to keep everything level underground, like, and this just like Bristol, the tunnels in the narrative, the tunnels are 1,000 years old, so they're probably a heck of a lot older than that anyway. But
Right.
let's just go back 1,000 years ago. What technology are we taught that they were using to build stuff?
Yeah.
And when we've got advanced tunnel systems underneath cities.
Yeah. Advanced GPS is the
Yeah,
only way we can
exactly.
do it today.
Yeah, you just think like the only way you can do a straight line, in my opinion, is if you've got a laser or a string line. But then
Yeah.
you still have to find out if that string line's level.
Right.
From A
Yeah.
to
And
B.
you have to line it. You still can't see the other end of the other one.
It's just like unless they had other technology that we can't fathom, or they literally had what we got today. Maybe they had the same tech that we got today, and it's just been reintroduced in the 1800s. Maybe there's a suppression period where there's like, right, boom, let's give everyone nothing for like
Yeah.
100 years, let them
Yeah.
forget about that, and then reintroduce things in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah. That's a great idea you just said there, because years and years ago, I dove into patents really hard. Um, I became obsessed with patents. It started with military patents, and then you look into when the whole concept of patenting something even started. And yeah, it's you can see the writing on the walls. Uh, they're taking old technology and trickling it into the public sector.
Mhm.
Yeah, well said. I agree with that completely. And for anyone out there, obviously, we won't have time to even touch on that, but um, you can follow the rabbit hole um, of that, and it's pretty amazing. You'll find it doesn't go back very far at all. And we're talking about technology. We're throwing out ideas around about 3D printing, you know, pyramids and islands essentially. And yeah, it's not that hard of a concept to entertain when we're talking about things we're talking about. But yeah, I agree with you completely. It doesn't make any sense, and um, even if they were 1,000 years old, they're incredibly advanced for that time frame. But I would imagine, like you, that they're probably far far older than that. And if we're entertaining ideas like I kind of mentioned, that city in Missouri, there's dozens. In California, they found stone cities buried under 400 feet of lava flow
Oh God, man!
all over California. So
Like,
yeah,
do you reckon they've purposely built them underground, or something's happened for that material to go over the top of it and get buried?
crazy, crazy volcanic eruptions.
That's
I mean,
mad.
the
So do you
amount
reckon
of lava, it's lava and it's ash, and it shows signs of it being more than one event. And yeah, the New Madrid fault, there was a quake in 1812 in New Madrid, Missouri. And there's actually, in the 1800s, they were writing that New Madrid shows the signs of a civilization so large that it may have housed upwards of 10 million people. And
that?
this is um, before the 1700s, because no one knew about any of this stuff, when America was founded, supposedly. Again, this is supposedly.
Mhm.
And there was an earthquake in 1812 there that is just insane. I mean, we're talking, one of the largest quakes to ever hit America. And it changed the course of the Mississippi, and the water flowed backwards for a day. So you can imagine what kind of upheavals were going on. And I think that's part of it. Um, but yeah, there seem to be multiple events that have happened here,
Mm.
and
And
that's why that's why England is kind of special, because um, there's still so much of the ancient stuff left. Like you can't. There's a few cities in Boston and New York, and maybe in Philly. I don't know anymore. You can still take a tour of the underground um, subway systems, but nothing like you're doing in England. That doesn't exist. I mean, they've wiped the map, and no one knows anything here.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
I know. Yeah, and it's just very fishy that now they want to know. Like in the last month, they've put a national notice out for everyone to literally map these sites and put them onto one site. I think that's so fishy.
yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I remember your video where you explored Portland,
Hmm.
And I was born in Portland, but on my neck of the woods.
Hmm.
And my city of Portland is built on 3 or 4 stories of very old stone, subterranean. And I in middle school, when I was single digits, I took a tour with my school. Now it's completely closed; that
Hmm.
no one's allowed down there at all. So kind of like what you're saying, this like we're going to give tours, and then people started going, "What's going on with this? Like, really? Like, are you guys like, what's the narrative here?" And Portland, my Portland is a fairly young city, very young, mid 1800s. And my state isn't. That's the thing with the U.S. Our states are so young. You know, it the whole narrative with you know how we took over America, because that's how it worked. We took over America, and how states and what was here. They attribute all to this narrow window of time. But yeah, that's why I love your work so much. And I kind of got off topic there, but because there's so much that they're willing to let you see. Whereas here in America, they've put in a lot of work to dismantle. They flat out were saying in the 1800s, they found this ancient wall in Mississippi. This wall's crazy, Paul. It'd blow your mind. It's just like what you were saying. It has all these exotic minerals, exotic crystals in it. Anyways, they were like, we need a new Capitol building, and these walls are already made for us.
Hmm.
So they flat out said they just dismantled the wall and built the building.
I knew you was going to say that. As soon as you started saying that, I thought, no, cheeky gets, didn't they?
Isn't that funny? I mean, how many times has that happened?
Yeah, well, I believe that happens quite a lot. I believe they reuse this old material because it is superior.
Yeah,
So when you go to an old place and you've got these humongous blocks, they break them down into other blocks, and then now it gets called a quarry. But then you're building places like London out of it. I mean, like if you go to how much stuff was built out of the Portland from Portland, like pretty much most of London was built with Portland stone.
yeah.
Think like
How
it's just,
funny is that? Portland
yeah,
stone. Is that the term they use? Portland stone.
yeah, that's it.
Isn't that okay? So here's want to know something funny. My home city, Portland. They're known all across the country for Portland cement.
Yeah, well, this is just, we're known for Portland cement as well, but we obviously like that's the how can I say this? Before you've made the block, you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah, Portland cement and
Yeah,
Portland blocks. That's what they're known for.
that's so
That's
funny.
great,
Yeah,
isn't it?
because my Portland is built on the Columbia River, and the mixture of sand and gravel and the minerals in them make for like the best quality cement.
Yeah,
So this
that's what they
our
said.
we have a huge factory, and it's been there from the beginning of the state essentially. And it makes me think like, oh man, this must have been here already, and they
Yeah,
must have known this, and they were using this area and coming here. Because there is a star fort right here, right on the edge of the waterway here, the Columbia River, and it's mostly buried. And there's no narrative for it. They just describe it as a military outpost, but the distance between the Columbia River is absolutely gigantic, and the mouth of it into the ocean is huge. The bridge that goes over is crazy. It used to terrify me as a little kid going over it because it'd be so fogged in, you couldn't
yeah.
see the bottom, and it's miles long.
Wow.
But anyways, yeah, that's so funny I think there must be some similarity there with
It's like
the
they use the same program, mate, in different countries. They give them the
what I was
same
going to say.
programming, the same backstory, the same bull BS. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's why, yeah, it's just very peculiar. That's actually knocked my socks off about Portland, because we're told in England that Portland cement is the best cement in the world, and you can only get it from Portland in England.
wow,
Yeah. And
so funny.
is that the same story they give you?
Yeah, they say that the mineral content and the composition of the gravel and the sand make for the most ideal cement. So yeah, it
Yeah,
makes you wonder. Yeah,
yeah,
Portland Cement is a huge company, and they ship their sand and gravel all over the United States.
yeah. In my opinion, I think they're breaking down the old world and reusing it, and that's what
Yeah,
they're doing. That's exactly what
yeah.
they're doing.
On episode 1 of the Archivist, I had a friend of mine, 13th Monkey, who's in the chat.
Oh, I've seen it. I see it, yeah.
And one of the big connections we made long time ago, back in the days where I was co-hosting a few episodes of Radio Tartary with my friend Victor, he made this correlation that, I made the correlation that golf courses often were built on top of not only old war sites, but mounds and underground complexes. He also made the connection that these big cement companies were setting up shop right next to these places. And we've hypothesized that, like you just said, they're just grinding up. They have, and mining companies. So you'll have a mine, you'll have an aggregate company, and then you'll have a cement company, and then you'll have a golf course, and they're all in cahoots.
Yes.
They're mining out all the subterranean stonework, who knows what else, and grinding it up, and pulverizing it, making aggregate, making cement out of it. So
you're killing a few birds with one stone there, aren't you? Really. Obviously, the contractors don't realise what they're doing. They're just giving a backstory to go and dig this stuff out, but they don't realise that they're digging out like ancient blockworks or ancient parts of geopolymer.
You just tell them it's rock. They just think they're grinding up rock.
Yeah, that's it. And obviously, what you're doing with that is you're then generating money because you're selling the material and you're getting rid of history, and no one's going to know about it.
Yeah,
it really, like if you go to Portland, there's I can't remember. I think there's 2 active quarries on Portland, but the rest of them that they said they're quarries, but they're just humongous blockwork piled up. It's like I took my tape measure down there because I've been there a few times, and I measured one of the blocks was 3 meters by 800. So you can't see in here, but say 800 centimeters, 800 centimeters, 800 millimeters. So just under a meter by 3 meters it was. I couldn't see how far it went back because I couldn't get my tape in there. I'm just, this is a wall. This is one of the walls with the blocks in it. And you think,
right.
Like if this was a quarry, why is there blocks everywhere? Why have you not sold them? Why, and it just, half of that stuff there didn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the quarry thing, that was a word I meant to use as well. There's quarries. That seems to be a similar thing, find something underground, the mining companies come in, the quarry companies come in, and then they just start digging it all up, and no one's, everyone's none the wiser. So, but, why don't we jump into some of your, pictures or video or whatever it is you want to share, and we can just kind of go from there.
Okay. So I'm going to just show these first. I'm just going to get that up. So I'm just going to prepare to share the screen. Right, present. Yeah, so these are just like these. A lot of these are not recent. I thought if I show the older stuff, I've got some new stuff in here, but I just need to refresh as well because there's some stuff in here that's just phenomenal. But most of it's in relation to what we're talking about anyway.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure it's sharing. Excellent there. So this is actually the Kent coastline. Like I said, I went around and mapped it out because I went there with someone I used to be with, and because we used to do days out and stuff, right? So we was like, let's go to Kent and have a look. And when I got to Kent, and I walked down to the shore, and I looked back, and this is the first time it ever happened. And I looked back at the cliffs, and I was just staring at it for about 15 minutes without even saying nothing. I was just looking up and down the whole coast, just thinking, no, this ain't right. This is not right. And then from then, I ended up going there nearly every weekend, just like literally documenting everything. But this is part of the cliffs. Now, in my opinion, this just looks like some sort of blockwork to me, but you can see that they've poured concrete down it a long time ago and the concrete's falling off.
Mm-hmm.
This is other parts of it. You can see where it's damaged, and basically, I'm going to show you some images now. Let's get to these. So, what I'm showing you this for is because I believe, or in my humble opinion, the cliffs or the cliff faces would have looked like this, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, they've been damaged, weathered. Like I believe some of them cliffs are probably the oldest stuff around. So they end up getting damaged and look really rough and ready and uneven, you know. So that's why I wanted to show these two pictures, because you've got it here, and then as soon as you break the blocks down, like these parts here, it starts looking really, it looks like what you'd call a bit of geology, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to show these images first.
It looks like cement, kind of like the previous pictures.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look at this though. Look how flush it is, and then how it gets to underneath as soon as you just start breaking it down or dismantling it. Or I like to use the word deface it, because that's really what's happened. Is they've just defaced the flush part.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Let's get to right. So these are the blocks, and this is where I went, and I was like, "What has happened here? What is this sharing from you?" Right? Yeah, so this is like some steps coming down to the sea. Behind me is the sea, and these are like humongous walls, right?
Yeah.
And then you just got piles of rubble, like you've got a pile of rubble coming down here. This is actually a blocked up tunnel here as well, but it's just been blocked up with it. The blocks that block that up are so old. And right, I took my drill and I wanted to know what was going on, so I took a block out of the wall just to see what was going on here. So this is like, I'm just showing you the blocks in the wall. Well, I'm showing you a window there. That was a window.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. And like you said, they covered over this with some kind of cement or plaster or both.
Yeah,
so
you can see that's over this one now. But look,
the
why is
block
there
is even... Yeah.
So I was like, what is going on there? And even here, so this is obviously a buttress is a support for a block wall or a brick wall, right?
Right.
And I couldn't believe it. This now, I'm going to show you a video in a minute. It's only a 7-second video, but it's a buttress made out of chalk holding up the cliff. Let me show you. So this is more block work. This is right now. This is when it was flush. For some reason, this area hasn't been damaged. But if you look on this side here and this side here, you can see like how damaged it is. So this shows you that at one point walls look like this. You know,
yeah.
This part here looked like this. You know, somehow
less weathered or some kind of destruction.
like for some reason it got left alone.
Yeah.
Again, this is a strange one because this was showing. This is a massive entrance, by the way.
Yeah,
you could drive
caves going into this.
Yeah, but you could probably drive a car into that one because how tall it is.
Yeah,
like that's humongous. Like, I could stand up in that one. This one was just humongous. And what was very strange about this one was there was just flint all over this, and mainly the flint was in lines, which was very, very peculiar.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this line up here of flint. It goes across like that, then stops, and then comes down, and then goes across again. You know, it's just wrong way. So this one now is the buttress. You remember, like I said about the wall support.
Yeah.
Right. Like what is going on there?
Yeah, you can see it sticking out of the wall. Yeah.
This is and it's done. Look at the precision, because these angles. This angle goes in at about a 30-degree angle, and this the same on this side, identical. It goes in at a 30-degree angle. Look.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, this wall has to be so old. It's so weathered.
Yeah, I'll play that again because it's just phenomenal. Like this is just like undeniable, not natural. Like to create like buttresses. Like a buttress is a wall support.
Yeah, and this is in Kent. You said close to the water.
Yeah, Kent in England. This is the southeast of England.
Yeah.
It's just one more time. I know, one more time. And also, take note of the concrete that had been dropped down the wall, and you can see where it's just fallen off because they must have done that about 100 years ago.
Yeah, cover up the ancient stone.
So
that was that's what I love so much about your Malta videos is like they kind of embrace how ancient that place is, you know. And there's just
I love Malta. I love it.
That place is insane. I mean, yeah, and I think the same thing about Malta now. Watching your videos and talking about Gotland is just like Malta. They're so
Yeah.
similar. Insanely,
Yep.
insanely megalithic blockwork. An island built on a very similar limestone shell mix.
Hmm.
Now, for people that are listening, it would be easy to confuse, millions of years of ocean in the Mediterranean or the Baltic washing over these rocks, these tablelands, depositing shells. That's not what we're talking about. These are grinded up shells mixed into a geopolymer.
Yeah, I have loads of. I've got some images of that for you. I've got clean blocks of geopolymer. I've got render on the wall. I've got my own geopolymer that I've made. So I've got a few little treats for you, mate. A few little goodies, a few little nuggets. But this image here, if right, this is inside a cave complex in the same area, but not on the coastline, nowhere near the coastline, right?
Okay.
So this is pretty much in the centre of this island that I've said is man-made. And when I said at the beginning of this video, I spoke to the tour guide and I noticed one wall in there that was just undamaged, like it's just flush. And I thought, well, hello, what's going on here? And if you look, this wall is actually in pristine condition. It looks a little bit weathered, but that's probably because it's, in my opinion, donkey's years old.
Yeah.
But if you look at this side here, it's been damaged, right? And there's a
Mhm.
pipe running through here, by the way. This is a pipe that serves buildings. This is a waste pipe.
Right.
So that collects people's wee and poo and stuff from the sinks and that. So the people that installed the buildings above had to do the waste through this complex, which is another interesting little topic. But yeah, and again on this side, you can see that the wall is damaged, but for some reason, this part of the wall has been kept in a clean sort of way. So I'm saying on my own back that this is what the walls of what I've just showed you with the buttress and that used to look like before it was damaged, because we see it like this lot now. But when I went into this tour place, I said to the geezer, the guy, I was like, mate, that looks like a wall. And he goes, yeah, it is. Goes, we forgot how they done it because it was a long time ago. And I was like, oh, there you go. I have got that on video somewhere, Ben, but I couldn't dig it out. I couldn't find it. Like, I've got so many gigabytes of
I mean,
videos
it's kind of the whole Freudian slip, even though you obviously meant to say that. But I mean, you get to a point where, especially if this is like if geology and archaeology is your profession, you're going to come across stuff like this all the time. It's things that you just go, well, we don't know. It's better for somebody to say we don't know than to make up a lie or give you some kind of silly excuse. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
there's so much we don't know. And while you're finding your next slide, I'm going to show something really quick. We talked about it off air. It's just a little excerpt on the Library of Alexandria. So here's a picture of facing the coastline right near the library. So take a gander at that. Look at all this. I mean, you can, but it's just zooming on that. That's annoying. You can see, would that help? That doesn't help. Well, that helps a little bit. You can see there's cows eating. You can see carved stone doorways.
Oh, sugar, mate. I didn't even notice all that down there.
And then they're looking through an aperture here in the rock face, and they're looking towards the coastline. Here is right along near the Library of Alexandria. It's a little bit behind this, but this is what the coastline looked like in the 1800s along the Mediterranean. You can see where they just took old stone and made this wall down here. I know it's kind of hard to see because the resolution's a little small, but then you can see all of this housing.
Is that inside the rock?
It's inside, and it goes all the way along the coastline like that.
Wow.
And the article that I put along with it goes like this: Ruins of Alexandrian Library. It is stated in the London Daily News that Captain Newman, an Admiralty agent on the Southampton station who had just returned from Alexandria, visited while there the ruins of the Alexandrian Library. A large mound in Alexandria has been believed for ages to mark the spot where once stood the famous library, which was burned by the Caliph Omar. This mound is now in process of removal. Splendid houses are to be built on its site. While Captain Newman was there, an immense stone of blue granite was dug out, which weighed several tons and is covered with apparently Coptic letters. The captain was unable to take a tracing of the letters. Beneath the mound, the remains of a building, something like a star fort, have been discovered, and masses of double columns, also signs of wells of water and
Oh,
of places for heating. So we got geothermal heating, we got wells, which star forts are always connected with. The brickwork is of immense strength and thickness. The bricks being not as thick as English ones, but longer and broader. An immense number of Arab boys and girls who engaged in carrying the rubbish away in baskets. Captain Newman picked up many curiosities there, such as pieces of conglomerated brick, mortar, and metalwork, bearing evident marks of having been fused together by intense heat. The captain learnt in Egypt that the French savant who discovered the buried city of Saqqara beyond Grand Cairo was packing up an immense number of treasures for the transportation to France. So, yeah. What do you think?
phenomenal, mate. Absolutely phenomenal. It's just this is like the sort of stuff that I'm seeing in England, though. Not on a scale like that, but when you just showed in the background, you had like a shell going over these dwellings.
Yeah,
That there is abundant in the West Midlands. That's
really.
abundant. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like that everywhere because a
Yeah.
lot of the cavern systems in America, they find structures just like that. With, they can't say if it was a buried structure or if it was carved out that way. It's,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell which is which. And I think it's hard for us to say for sure if certain structures were built underground or if they were above ground and then buried.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
I
what we've
mean,
got to work out, isn't it? That's
yeah,
our
for
job,
sure.
mate.
Yeah, and so this clipping is from the late 1800s, and people weren't just throwing around the word star fort in the 1800s. It's a pretty rare phrase, and for them to say what looked like a star fort, I mean, what does a star fort look like? I mean, it's not something you easily confuse with other structures. I mean, we're talking buttresses, really acute angles. Everyone knows what star fort looks like, so I would imagine that people in this time frame knew the difference. And to think that a star fort lies buried underneath the Library of Alexandria, which was destroyed quite some time ago, what's going on here?
That's the scary thing about it, because like there is now proof that there was something before Alexandria, and we are taught that Alexandria is so flipping old. Do you know what I mean? So, like, where does it start, or where does it begin?
Yeah,
And also like it becomes to that question: what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because like we it's just a weird. I don't know how to put
it
it.
is weird. I think and I'll get a little philosophical here, but I think we're living in some kind of a designed system.
Yeah,
There's no other way to describe it because when you get to fundamental questions like that, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's you know, it's no different than the constant, the human journey to understanding and what, why are we here? Who are we? Where do we come from? Where do we go? And when you dig down into the deepest recesses of this realm, it keeps showing you more and more that everything is man-made.
mm,
You know,
and
there is there's a biological um, element, of course, but for the most part, it's seeming the foundations of many of the continents are
man-made.
man-made.
Yeah, and that's why I asked that question, because I mean, if it's man-made, like, where has this material come from? Like,
Yeah,
who put these materials here? Like, did they just spawn like a simulation? Like, do you know what I mean? Did some guy did Foth go, right, I need some sandstone here, I need some iron oxide over here, I need some
yeah,
limestone over here? Like, where did it come from? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like,
Yeah.
and even if you want to go down the route and say it's all natural and it's come from like literally acts of God and geology, you know, like stuff getting pushed up from underground, then where did that come from?
Yeah.
You know, like it's
Well,
just
I mean, the block work alone obviously suggests very different. And we're talking, as you're showing, we're talking very ancient block work. And then you go hundreds of feet underground and you have tunnels, systems. And like I was mentioning with Paris and London, you had the commissioners and the engineers were finding these things and didn't even know they were there. They were just breaking into them.
Oh, I've got one for you actually. Just while you mentioned it, I was going to mention this earlier. There was an old. I've done it when I first started the channel up. There was a what do you call it? It's called the Victorian Hyperloop, and it's actually a pneumatic railway system with tubes that can fit people in
Yep.
London. And the only way they found that is when they was digging for something. I think they was digging to put something down in the early or the mid 1800s. And what they'd done is they broke into one of the tubes by accident. And then they followed one of the tubes and they found out it was actually a pneumatic railway system. And when I found that out, I then started digging. I found some newspaper articles and things like that. And they used to send food underground and people underground in these pneumatic tubes. So it's just done by air in these capsules, just going from. But like you said, the only way they found it, there was no record of this stuff. But even though I found articles of it, there was no record like for these people when they were digging it up.
Right.
So it's like, how do you not know it was there? If you're going to go and build something, or maybe they did know it was there, made out they just found it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. But like being in a building game, when you go and build something, you need to know what's underneath you. So stuff gets scanned. People go down and have a look and things like that, you know, because you don't want to go through a pipe, gas pipe, water main, or anything like that. So you have to know what's underground.
Yeah. And for those listening, the pneumatic stuff is really amazing. You know, they have magnetic railways all over Europe, and they don't have. It was like sci-fi. They never even really went as far as to say they actually built them. But yeah, I've seen articles where they find them.
There's some in New York, wasn't there? There's some in New York.
The pneumatic system in New York was the most advanced in the world, and I can't remember the numbers, but I have articles again on my Twitter about it. You can just type in pneumatic on my search. The original cover-up story, I believe, was a cover-up, was that it was for sending mail between all the giant buildings, which I'm sure they were doing, but I think it was an older technology.
Mm-hmm.
When you dig into it deep enough, like you just said, they had in the 1800s in New York, they had lamp posts. The bottom of the lamp posts you opened and you put your tube in. I mean, that's how advanced we're talking, right? So you have a city with incredibly advanced structures like that, but then they're finding subway tunnels that they didn't know about. It just kind of goes with what you were saying that, okay, so how do we have this incredibly advanced city, but we're building a type of subway that is less advanced, and we're stumbling into this more advanced system that's older? Like, how does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. The pneumatic stuff is incredible. It was way faster. It used less energy. That kind of seems to be a narrative. You go back in time, things are not only more advanced, they use less energy, they're faster,
more efficient.
It gets more cumbersome and slower and more expensive and uses way more energy. But yeah, the pneumatic stuff is crazy. I found plans. They were trying to build a pneumatic line from New York to San Francisco, and they were like plotting the whole thing, and they had people traveling the whole route across America to plan a pneumatic line. And I would imagine that these pneumatic subways probably covered a lot of this country, if not your country as well.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And another thing that I've noticed, like the first train station, or one of the first train stations in the United Kingdom, actually goes through a load of sandstone, and the ticket office is cut into a sandstone, like into the sandstone. So you've got like a window and a door, and it looks like something out of the Flintstones. And you think, like, you're in a city, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Like, how comes you've used this old Flintstone sort of like lookalike building as your first ever railway train station ticket office? You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how comes it's going into the sandstone? Yeah, it just seems weird to me, and it's the same in Malta because, like I said, I spent a lot of time there, and I was mapping underground all the star faults there,
yeah.
what I could get into,
Hmm.
and from Valletta to Floriana, it's all underground, all connected underground, like just one massive tunnel,
Yeah,
and it's obviously old world, in my opinion, old world transport system.
I
That's
agree.
what I believe it is.
I agree. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that picture. I think it's London where they were excavating for the subway. It's that super famous picture where you can just see, they're probably 6 stories below ground and the buildings just keep going, you
Yes,
know?
I know what picture you're on about. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so they don't even bother explaining that, right? Okay, there's 6 stories of this building, and then they're digging the subway below it and they're finding older subways that they didn't know were there.
It's like, mate, it's just that people haven't got time to look for this stuff, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you wake up, you have a bit of breakfast, you go to work, you have a lunch break that you whatever, then you come home, like you're knackered, you watch a bit of telly, have a bit of grub, have a bath, go to bed, do it all again. No one's got time to look at this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
No one has no time whatsoever,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why it just gets dismissed.
It's very, very true. Yeah.
But I've just got these images of Kent because I just want to show. I've only got 4 images, so I just wanted to show these, and then we can just tie that little topic up.
Yeah, please.
It's oh, is that me? Oh, that's not me. Sorry, mate.
Oh, here. You got to add your.
Yeah, there she is. So yeah, it's this. So I was saying these are structures, and when you look at some of these images, I mean, look at this. Like, you could drive a car through that. Look at the
Mhm.
size of it, and it's going into it. And when you see this side here, you're going to think this is just like a part of a Starfall wall. Look at this.
Yeah, obvious block work.
Look, like this is in condition. No, not the best, but you can see that it's a wall. You can see the angles on it. But look what they've done to it this side.
Yeah.
Like, if this was a natural, then that'd all be the same. That'd all be
Yeah.
weathered the same. It'd all be the same material. But
Hmm.
you can just see these angles coming down here. Look how flush that is.
Yeah.
And then it looks like they've just used the blocks from here to block this up.
Hmm.
But again, how far does this go down? Because you've got this cast concrete right in front of all this.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what the concrete's hiding.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know.
I think it's probably hiding some really, really big stone block, kind of like you see in Malta, right? The deeper
Yeah,
down you go, the,
yeah,
the stones get very cyclopean. Like this
yeah.
wall looks ancient and weathered, but it's standing
And look at the
on a
blocks.
it's standing on an ancient foundation. I mean, incredible, huge blocks. If I had to, that's a guess, but often that's what we find all around the world is when you get to the bottom of it, it's built on like an older foundation.
Oh, yeah. What's this? It's like what's this?
Yeah, it's like plaster smeared on there.
Yeah, like, I've only noticed that. I've looked at that so many times. But yeah, this is just another angle of like of what we was just looking at. But you can clearly see these were walls at one point, and this tunnel goes straight across to the other side. So if I just pan the camera around to that side, there'll be another one of these entrances that way. You know,
Yeah,
so if
yeah,
past.
crazy. I mean, it's kind of like what I was. Man, I wish I remember the name of that island. Wilhelm Wright owned the island. It was near England, and yeah,
Off of Scotland.
No, it was near England. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a military base, or it was turned into a military base. And he said it was one of the most important pieces of land in the world. And it wasn't until the war started that military images were leaked of it, and it looked so much like what you just showed there, with
Hmm.
giant entrances going into it, and everything was underground. It's just seeming more and more like that's everywhere, and that's the thing that's great about what you can do is there's not anything like that in America. It's obvious they blocked off a doorway. They don't even care that it's obvious, because so few people are even taking the time to look and ask questions.
So this here, right? If people, obviously a lot of people here do follow me, because, well, we're all here together, aren't we? And right, so I sit there, and I've been saying this for ages now, that I'm literally coming across buried structures. So when I say that, people are probably thinking of like box square standard structures, like a 2.4 house or whatever. I mean this sort of structure. This is in South America. I can't remember exactly where it was, but when I see this, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been talking about. Now imagine just slapping a load of mud over all of this. You'd be left with a couple of mounds, wouldn't you? And then if you discovered a little entrance, then you find yourself inside a subterranean network. So this 100%. Is what this is how I perceive what's underneath a lot of the stuff that I examine. So it's just like slapping a load of mud over these, and then planting some trees over them, you know,
100%.
And then saying there's nothing there. But I've got some geology images, or whatever you want to call it. So this is this is sandstone that I made. This is the red sandstone. The reason I made this was just to prove to people that it is easily done when you can look into it and research it. These things can be done. The granite that I made, that's just phenomenal. I'm well happy with that. That is the best thing I've ever. Well, I'm so happy with that. But where are we at? This is what I'm trying to show you. So going back to talking about geopolymer and humongous blocks and this layer that's spread over them. This is what I'm talking about. So underneath this, if you can see here, this is the actual red sandstone, this part here. But then here you've got this other flush bit. You can see here, this is a transition part where it's half off and half on, like it's just deteriorated. Here it's on fully, and on this little part here, you see there's nothing on it. And this is what I'm noticing abundant now. This is the sandstone again. You can see a part of that stuff is on it again. And again, if this was geological layers, this layer here, or this joint mark, is completely off to this one down here. You know, this is a completely different segment altogether. This is probably an independent part on its own. You know, this part must have been cast at the same time, like when these two bits are dried. You know, look, this is one part here. This is a separate part, and this is another part. Now, this image, right, is the reason I'm showing you this, because I'm actually now making my own geopolymer structure using, I'm literally making a wooden frame now. That's what I'm doing, because that's what I believe is going on in some of these. I believe they're making wooden frames and then pouring the mix on the outside of it. And then that's why we're left with these prints on the inside.
Okay.
But this obviously might not be wood. This could be done in some other material. But to me, it feels like there's some sort of wood. And I'll show you, because there's other images. So the reason I'm doing that, like I just said, is to build a frame out of wood, like a crate. And then I'm going to do layers of geopolymer going around it. And I'm going to let it set. And then I'm going to have a look, see what it looks like, and see if it comes through like anything like these. Just a little experiment. But I don't see how. Like this, it can only be prints of wood.
Yeah, I mean, casts had to be used in some places for some of these, you would imagine. Just if we're talking Occam's razor and pure efficiency, you're obviously going to be using some kind of mold or cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. What the material was used, who knows? But wood would seem like thank you, hippie shake, Heligoland. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Thank you so much. I'll be able to pull something up. So keep going, Paul.
Yeah, right. So I'm gonna right. So we was talking earlier, and you were saying about there's a material that goes over the inside of these walls that has been taken off.
Yeah, now, like a plaster or something like that.
This is it here, mate. This is part of it here.
Okay.
Now, why is this material like this? And again, if you was to look at this under a microscope, I can only imagine it is made up of an abundant amount of materials. Like it won't just be one or two pieces. It'll be something man-made, put together, and then spread up these structures. Here it is. So if this is a cliff or a mountain or whatever, this is geopolymer. This is no different to any other sandstone you'd see in another ancient world or an ancient realm or whatever however you want to put it. But if you look behind on the back, and a lot of it's behind these trees, you can see they've left this material on the wall.
It's like 1 inch, 2 inch thick.
And again,
kind of dressing it up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be like just some sort of internal decoration. I don't know if you want to paint it or decorate it or whatever. Now this is again where it gets to like bits of wood. You know, I can only imagine this being prints of wood, like where the mix is set. And again, look at these angles. And another thing I've noticed, when you go into the stone, you lose this what in geology like striation marks, because you can see them here. But as soon as the rock deteriorates, they're gone. Look, they're gone.
Oh yeah.
So it's very weird. And again, like I said, you've got this skin stuff over it. I don't know what it is. And then you've got the sandstone underneath. This is abundant. This is a very common thing. I don't know if this has been done to. I don't know why this has been done. I can't. But it's abundant everywhere I look in. Again, you've got the render up here over the red sandstone. But what they've done is, look, even on the bottom of this arch is covered in render.
Oh yeah.
If I was a supervisor to the people that was meant to be dismantling this place, I'd be so cheesed off. I'd be like, "What? Why have you left all this there?" Like, these are massive clues to, like, these were structures, but no one's saying that these are structures. People are just saying these are natural cliffs and mountains. And then when you look at the sandstone up close, I mean, look how clean that is. Well, that's not the best image, but you can see there's nothing in there. There's no impurities. Like, if like, I'm going to say this again because I've said it a minute. If this was some sort of marine, if this was what, like, sedimentary rock, then you'd find all sorts of stuff in there, stuff that had fallen to the bottom of the seas or stuck in the sand dunes, but you don't see nothing. It's a very clean mix. Now, this is interesting. I mean, if you look at the background of this picture, you can see all the lime leaching out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh yeah.
This image in the center is actually part of a massive shaft that's been blocked up. Now, I went out and mapped 2 of these that are connected together on an ancient site. Like remember I showed you a minute ago with the pre-buried. I mean, it's like a structure. So it's like one of them. And I managed to get inside part of it, and it had a massive shaft in it here like this. And you can see where the door frames went as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So I guess this was for water. And there's another one. So there's 2 of them that we found. And that's the shaft inside. I mean, look at it. Look at the size of it. That's me. I'm actually looking over like that, scared. That's the lime leaching out. And this is in mortar, but going back to these buildings. Now, this is a sandstone structure in Drakelow. So underneath this is one of the biggest military complexes in the United Kingdom. And this part is poking out of the ground. So I'm saying that the whole thing is connected and we're just given the crumb poking out the top. But look at this. This is, I don't believe this has been cut out. This is, in my opinion, been cast like this. So that's why I'm building this little crate project, just to see the similarities and see if I can match it up, see what's going on in here. And I mean, I know it's not the best image, but again, look at this.
Yeah, it looks like they were using molds, kind of.
Exactly. And again, this is some sort of glue. I don't know what this was. Or it might be a bit of paint, but where the beam went in there, this seemed like it might have been a bit of glue. Now this is just one flush, massive wall made up of like a couple of humongous megalithic blocks. And you can see where it's been squished into the full moulding. You can see going along here the print marks of the boards that have been holding it in. And you can also see where the bottom layer has cured, and then they've cast the next layer directly on top, and it's started to overflap.
Yeah.
But you can see where it's been squashed up against the boards.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just, and this image here, this one's in mortar actually, and this is sandstone, limestone. So we're just looking at red sandstone, and that red sandstone is called new red sandstone, which is a bit peculiar.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, like even though even though it's like apparently,
Old.
yeah, you know what I mean. It's like meant to be the most primitive thing there. It's like a natural cliff. Now this when I see this in Malta, this was just like I couldn't explain it at the time because my brain, all I knew was rock cut at that time. I weren't aware of geopolymer, so I took the images of this thing, but I couldn't actually talk about it because I couldn't. Like, my mind was telling me it was blade marks, saw marks, circular saw marks, but it's nothing of the sort. These are ripple marks. So this seems like there was some sort of like massive textile holding in this mix, and it might obviously not a very watery mix, more like imagine concrete, like imagine I don't know if anyone's done bricklaying, and you know the muck, the cement, like that sort of consistency. I imagine that to be like this when it was in the sack, but it seemed like this sack failed because you've got these ripples, and these ripples are massive, and they go down the corner of the block like a bag's just fallen down. It's very, but when I go back to Malta, these are the things I'm going to have a look at.
Do you see things like that or this picture is of Malta?
Yeah, this is in Malta. This is in one of the parks. This is
Gotcha.
actually this is hidden in Malta. Like you can't to get to this part. Like this part is actually it seems like it's part of a star fault, right? It's part of Floriana star fault, but it's in a park hidden. Like you have to literally climb over another part and see this. Like it's completely. It's like they was making this part and something happened and they've left it. That's what it seems like. But when I go back there, I'm gonna be going all over that sort of stuff. The 26th of April, by the way.
Oh, nice. Coming up. How long are you going to be there?
Don't know yet, mate. Don't know. Enough.
As long as you want to be.
Yeah, as long as I want. Now this is this is back in the West Midlands. Like, I can't understand this. Like from a geology perspective, and the colours as well. Like I know it's all the same red sandstone, but how comes this one's got either it's painted green or it's got algae on it? This one's white or it's I don't know what's happened, but you can see they're all like these are three different parts here.
Yeah.
You know? This one's going up here, and the striations are going like vertical. This one's pretty much horizontal, and this one's pretty much horizontal, but they're at different levels, you know. So I don't know how that would work out in geology if this.
Yeah, that's not geological, and you wouldn't build a structure like that. So lots of questions.
Yeah, it's just very peculiar stuff. This is inside one of the structures. Now, this is why, like I said, I'm building these crates because I'm gonna cast this and see if we'll get the same results. I'm actually gonna do the I believe they've put the geopolymer down at an angle so it gets all the air out, so it falls down. If that makes sense. And look at this. This is just. So this again. This is just like the most bizarre photo I've ever taken in my life. It's just phenomenal. Look, you've got lime leaching out of these, what looks like to be wooden boards or prints of wooden boards. The boards stop here and it's completely a different surface, same material, different surface. Here, it looks like there's been another board added because it looks like something might have been failing. But that's the reason, again, I'm doing this. You can see the boards. I want to see what happens when I pour the geopolymer over these. I want to see what imprints are left and how it looks, and it's only going to strengthen up my theories of this stuff because you can't say this is natural. Look at it. This is clearly a plank of wood that's been put into situ, and these blocks. You can see the line where these blocks stop here, or is that wood prints? You know, wood or blocks.
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure, but it's obviously something.
And again, like if this was natural, then you'd expect these to marry up over to this side, and this one to marry up over here. You wouldn't expect a V cut down like a 105-degree angle and not to be the same. You know?
Yeah.
It's just.
It's almost weird. It's like an organic and a man-made
It just don't
structure.
make sense. But what can you do? You can only try and you can only try. This is now this right. Big things are going in the next couple of weeks. Put it that way. I can't say nothing at the moment. I can't say nothing, but big things are going in, meaning a lot of stuff's coming in the next couple of weeks. I've got to keep that quiet for a minute, unfortunately.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is going to get hit up. So, like I was saying, look, I've mapped all this out, and it's in one straight line. And I believe it is going over an underground river as well. That's what I believe.
Yeah, it's funny. You find a lot of the ancient stuff in Mexico, especially on the Yucatan, that all the roads went over underground rivers. The roads were like built right over the top of them.
Yeah, they were the old roads, weren't they? And the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
Rode the boat.
Yeah. Good point. I never made that linguistic connection, but yeah, it's odd, and they're very forward about it when they dig down into these places in Mexico. But it seems likely that walls, rivers, and roads are all very much related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now going back to like I said, you've got the red sandstone, you've got something smeared over it. This is that material again. I don't know if it's sandstone with a different like pigmentation color in it. I don't even know. I don't know. But this time it's been put in front of the sandstone. So this is the wall. This is it in very good condition, and this is the wall behind it, the sandstone.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah, it's like two constructions on top of one another.
Yeah, and my questions are: is this for waterproofing, or is this to protect this, or is it like a decorative finish? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, does the sandstone? The sandstone seems like it's it's pumicey or easy to erode. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, only the ancient stuff. Only this ancient stuff. The stuff that I've made is solid, but that is what, a year old.
Yeah.
Stuff could be, God knows. Well, who knows? It could be very, very old.
Like wind and rain, that wears sandstone, I would imagine, right? So maybe this is a protective layer, like you were saying.
Exactly. And here we go. You can see. Look, you can see here. Like, it's just been smeared over it. It's not the best image, but the lighting on this side was quite rubbish. But you can see that this is completely separate to this.
Yeah.
It's just been smeared over.
What do you think it's made out of? Some kind of cement plaster or something? Don't know.
I honestly don't know, mate. I don't know. And the other thing is, it don't look like, when you look at sandstone up close, they look quite far apart, the particles, and this looks very compressed, this stuff. But again, that probably explains what you said. That's why this sandstone's porous, and this might be a weathering sort of protection material going over the front of it.
Yeah, that seems the most likely for sure, especially because it's not really providing anything structurally. It's just on the outside. It's not very thick.
Look at it.
And sandstone is notoriously soft and easy to erode. So this has to be not only I'm sure it was multi-purpose. It was decorative because you've shown in other places in your pictures that they probably had some perhaps paint or plaster or decorations or things carved into it, right? So you come along and you cover it, kind of like siding on a house.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the sandstone that's behind it, So you've got that material. Like, if this was external, but this is internal, externally you'd have that. I don't know if it's naturally green or that's just the algae that's gone on it over years, but that green looking stuff that we just looked at, this completely different material to this. It might be sandstone, but it just seems a lot more compact than this. This just seems very like
porous.
Yeah, and it's just a bit like a paradox as well. Sand, stone, like it's a stone made out of sand. It's just I don't know, just don't sit right in my head. But going back to what you said a minute ago, you said that some of it's not good build, some of it's not strong. They said that in Nottingham about the sandstone, and let me just get some images up. Sorry, mate.
Well, yeah, because the sandstone was used in some dwellings in the southwestern parts of the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
and they often had to kind of buttress it with beams of wood inside.
Right.
And I would imagine that was because it wasn't strong enough, and
Yeah.
perhaps in a storm or heavy rains or who knows what, they needed some extra strength, and maybe the outer plaster provided some of that, but I mean these walls are so thick. I mean the
Right.
sandstone
Easily.
wall you showed earlier with the plaster on top of it was what, probably at least a foot thick. So they knew they had to make it pretty thick for it to
Yeah.
be durable.
Right, I'm just transferring some images, mate, off my
Yeah, no worries.
uh
It makes me think too in the Southwest, a lot of the Pueblo houses, they used plaster, and it has to be a similar idea as the sandstone because
mhm.
it would degrade over time. The wind and use, you'd just be dealing with this dust all the time, and so the plaster not only made things decorative, but it provided that extra protection from weathering and just average use. While
Definitely.
you're pulling this up, I made a thread for this episode, and I'll just kind of, we're not going to have time to go through them all. Obviously, there's a bunch, so I'll just read a few while you pull up your pictures, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you can shout out you had 2 donations if you want while I'm getting this ready.
Oh, did I? Oh my God! I'm so sorry if I've missed that. I've been Colleen. Oh my God! Hey, girl, big up, Tiger. I did. I'm so busy trying to look at these images. I didn't even see none of this. Thank you very much. Oh my God! Who is it?
Yeah,
I
you
think you
had
know.
one. You had one earlier too, but I can't remember who it was.
Oh man, please forgive me. I promise you, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm just so involved trying to find these images. And, please, who was it? Who was it? And I'll come forth now. Ah, yeah, but big
Okay,
up, Colleen.
so
Thank you very much.
this one's called "Comparison of Ancient Mortars." It's written in Washington, 1873.
Yeah, interesting, mate.
And of course, it's going to load slow. Dr. Wallace of Glasgow has been paying some attention to the character of mortar used in ancient buildings, and among others refers to specimens from the Great Pyramid, from the island of Cyprus, from the ruins of Athens, and also from ancient ruins in Rome and elsewhere in Italy. In a recent communication to the Philosophical Society of Glasgow, he mentions the remarkable difference between them. In some edifices at Baalbek and some ruined cities in Turkey, buildings are met with constructed of immense blocks of stone, jointed with such nicety that even the blade of a penknife could not be pushed between them, but without any mortar whatever. On the other hand, the Egyptians used mortar freely, as in the Great Pyramid. This, however, consisted almost wholly of gypsum or sulfate of lime. A specimen of mortar from an ancient Phoenician temple was like that found in the baronial castles of England, having been made of burned lime, fine sand, coarse sand, and gravel. The lime in it had become completely carbonated, converting the mass into solid rock. The ancient Greek mortars from ruins in the vicinity of Athens contained more lime than that of Cyprus, and no gravel. That from Herculaneum in Rome and its neighborhood appeared to have been made from burned lime and volcanic ash, or puzzolana. I murdered that, but sorry. The mortar of the Great Pyramid consisted principally of hydrated sulfate of lime, to which were added traces of carbonate of lime, carbonate of magnesia, alumina, silica, and a very small percent of water.
So, mate, and what do you think of that, then, mate?
It was great. It just kind of gives you, like we
Mate.
mentioned, or we mentioned this earlier when we talked about that these Occam's razor, these people were
Mhm.
using what was available to them, and you have some cases like we mentioned. What makes Baalbek seem so cyclopean and stand out to so many people is that because the stone was so perfectly hewn and they didn't use mortar, and the reality is it could have just as easily been a
It's
geopolymer.
crazy, mate.
But what gets even crazier is that when you spend enough time in these articles and you find they're excavating places all around the world that they'll find stones at the bottom, buried, buried, and buried and buried. You know, for instance, the church in Mexico City, they did an excavation on it and found another pyramid below it. And at the bottom of that pyramid, they said were stone blocks with no mortar that resembled Baalbek. So, like we've mentioned in the show, the bottom of these structures seems to be cyclopean and of a different art or style or different group of people altogether. And perhaps we were just adding these less advanced. It gets less and less and less advanced as we go up, in time frames. And yeah, I just thought this was great because the when you look into patents for mortar and you study the carbonated um, the carbonation effect of mortars and how it converting the mass into a solid rock, it's pretty amazing. It just ties in with the geopolymer. That's why I highlighted it for this episode. It shows
it
really
is fascinating.
It's incredibly advanced.
Sorry,
I mean, yeah. This is a little article that talks about the importance of CO2 and how it reacts with the atmosphere and just the science involved in creating a mortar that basically fuses the stones together is insanely advanced. We struggle to do anything like this today. But yeah, and I'll just read a few more real quick and then we'll get back. A Cave of Wonder, Hawaii, 1888. While excavating, the foundation struck the dome of an immense cavern, lowered down 60 feet, level, followed for 2 miles to an opening in a cliff. Numerous relics found, a sepulchre, avenue at right angles. In it were numerous mummies, 100 or more. So yeah, they're excavating a foundation for a new building for a mill, and they strike the dome of a cavern. They lower the guy down into it, and yeah, what I was reading there was what they found. This part's the most interesting. One of the main avenues, numerous evidences existed that the place had evidently been the abode of cavemen, as numerous relics were found in the shape of pottery and bronze bric-a-brac. A sepulchre was discovered in a large niche on one avenue at right angles with the main avenue, and in it were numerous mummified bodies, 100 or more, in plain view. 3 of the mummies were removed to town where they excited great curiosity. The formations in the cave are beautiful beyond description. Stately towers of stalagmites suggestive of grotesque and unique figures. The avenues of the cave will measure in all probably about 7 miles, so that it may fairly be considered another rival to the Mammoth Cave, and certainly one of the great cave wonders of Kentucky. So yeah, and obviously I made a huge thread of tons of these for this. So, but we'll stop there and we'll get you back to what you were talking about, Sean.
Yeah, I mean that was incredible, mate. Like, I love these articles, man. Literally, that's inspired me to between you and a lady that I know, she does similar stuff. It's really inspired me to dig through these old newspaper articles because you get such an insight into them, didn't you? I mean, you wouldn't be allowed to say that sort of stuff now if they found anything like that, you know?
No, you wouldn't. No. We've talked about how what makes this era so great is that they're bringing the mummies into the town. I mean, nowadays you have so many government agencies involved in everything you're doing, from the permitting process to anything, that if you don't contact the right authorities when you find something, strike something, hit something, you'll have your permits permanently revoked. I mean, they've just got it under lock and key.
Yeah, it's under wraps now, isn't it? You can't do nothing wrong. You can't do nothing wrong.
And the only time you get really good ones was when they're really so big that they can't even hide it. Like there was a recently in New York City, another giant boat found, and the only reason you even get to hear about it is that it was so big that they had to completely stop the construction process. And we're talking a huge building. I mean, there's probably 1,000 workers working on this site, so you got a lot of people talking, a lot of people not working, and they're spending a week digging out this boat, and it's in an open air. They're, you got giant skyscrapers everywhere. How are you going to hide it? So it's rare. It's a rare thing that it's public enough that it gets out to everybody. But yeah.
Okay, so I've got these images. Like it's the last segments from me. I think there's about 20 images. We won't go through them, but it's literally it's just about Nottingham really, because again, it's one of these structures. And going back to sandstone, when we say or we're told it's really it's not good, it's really bad. But I want to show you what I noticed in Nottingham. I'm just going to share that screen. It's not a long stretch, so it's okay. So this is actually nothing to do with it, but this is actually a door in. I'm doing a meetup next weekend at this place. It's like an underground complex with these swinging doors, and it had these light switches in it. I'm not saying the light switches are ancient or anything. It's just very peculiar that there's light switches down there, but no power supply to the lights. It was very peculiar, very, very weird.
Yeah, but, that's a great little hinge there too.
Mate, this is the bottom of the door.
Yeah, that slider. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, look at it. Yeah, it's crazy, mate. This was the entrance. This was like a little lookout part, and this was actually the way in. This was inside of it. This is not why I'm showing you now. I'm just flicking through these, but this was that door that I just showed then. So you can see that it's made out of the sandstone, and then you can see it's got something smeared over it again, but it's falling off. You notice it everywhere. Look on the top here. You can see on the corner parts, this stuff is falling off. And even I've actually, in the video I did when I made a video on this particular complex, I noticed that there was chunks of this material falling off from the ceiling, and you could see the red sandstone underneath. So the bottom sandstone was yellow, and the red layer, the above layer, was red, which I just find phenomenal.
Yeah.
This is the door. This is the light switch that was there. I've seen similar to this in mortar in the old.
It looks very old.
Exactly, and I see this from old army barracks and things like that. That's where I noticed that before, but not as old as this, but similar.
Yeah, it looks iron. Old.
Yeah, it's very old. The cables are behind this. I don't know what this material is as well. It's like a cementy, concrete sort of stuff. But they've chased it out and obviously put the cables behind it and then filled it in.
Right.
This is just some red sandstone. Now, this is what I wanted to show you. Pardon me. This is in Nottingham, right? And like I say, Nottingham is, remember the image I showed you earlier where you've got the structure pre-buried. Right. This is what Nottingham is. So I went round the whole of the outside of the bits poking out, and you can see all these entrances going in. All right, and you're told that this is absolutely weak sandstone, right? You've got a little arch here, you've got a door here, you've got another door here. Judging by this arch, you could see it probably goes down a bit further. They've added a buttress here, which is funny, to the blockwork and not the sandstone. That's interesting, isn't it? Now, same part, just I'm walking around this structure, okay? I come across this. So, like this is a common feature that I found. You'd have obviously this tunnel's been cut off here, but this is a bigger arch next to a smaller arch, and this is a very common thing that I've noticed. Again, look at these swirl marks up here. And what I want, the reason I'm saying this is because we're told that this is so weak, this material, right? But then when you look what's on top of it, they were building a student accommodation directly on top of it, mate. Let me just show you.
Interesting. Wow.
Hang on a minute. See, now here, what they've done is they've just put blocks on the outside of it, to make it look like it's, but behind this is the sandstone.
And even that brick looks old, very old.
Yeah, we can see the sandstone on the left here behind it, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. They're just adding, this is just a facade.
Exactly. So, and again, like I said, they built the houses directly on top of this sandstone. All right, and you can tell that this is blocks. Well, not blocks as in square blocks, but block formation.
Yeah, segmented.
That's the word I'm looking for. This is irrelevant. This is just a mud flood video, really. But, and again, look, this is another part of the same structure. And don't forget, you've got Nottingham Castle here as well, which is another tourist attraction. So these are all off-limit parts of this sandstone structure. that I walked around the city to find. So I'm actually on private property here around the back of someone's house. But look at the segments in that. And again, they've put buttresses up against it. Look, what a mess is! What mess is that? You know?
Yeah, it just looks like this whole place just got destroyed, and they just came in and added not anything to make it look better, but bricks to make a structure built into it, kind of grafted a building into it.
You've got a door here.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I just want to take this back one little bit because there must have been
A cave. Yeah.
one that's going back. Right, look, this must have been a buttress before
Mm-hmm.
in sandstone, but it's been knocked down and just built on again.
Yeah, definitely. I
So
agree.
yeah, this is private property, mate. I've gone through the gates to go around here. So it's when you see the structure, I wanted to get up close to it and see, because I knew there'd be a load of entrances around it. So now this is my main look at this. Like I said, remember I said a minute ago, you've got the small one and the big one next to it. Yeah, and then when you see what's above this, it's going to knock your socks off. Like they're building humongous tower blocks on top of it. I'll get a better image. Look,
Wow.
and we're told this is so weak, mate, that you can't do nothing with it. Yet they're building that. That's a student accommodation, I believe. So, and I know that these complexes, accommodations, have like 200 apartments or rooms plus. So imagine the weight on that.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in that first article I read, that they were using substances that were getting. This is just like the coquina stuff. They were using such advanced forms of concrete and mortar that they were literally fusing the stones together. And so they're building on this because it's as strong as bedrock.
Exactly, and if you actually look, like there's a tunnel going directly underneath this. So this is probably about 15 foot from here to here. So that's the strength. They're only using that part for the strength. Under this bush, there's another load of arches, and behind here, just here, you can see another arch. So dotted along the whole of this, it's riddled with entrances. So like, if this was so weak, why are they building on top?
Yeah, it seems unlikely that this was some kind of soft stone that they carved caves into. It probably was a structure that saw some sort of insane event that deformed.
That's why I believe these set of images are so important, because I know a lot of it has turned weak over years because it is so old. But there's obviously still parts of it that are still in very good structural condition.
Definitely.
I mean, look, like you've got like abundant amount of tower blocks built directly above this.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely blocking off entrances like that. That's like exactly what you just showed, but without the bricks blocking the tunnel.
Yes.
Yeah. That looks like if you were just to magically take the bricks away, that's what it would look like.
Exactly. And this is another part of the city. Like, I just want to show you this because I just want to show you the axe. It's very peculiar. Parts of it haven't cured. You can see the lines. Look at that. Is that limestone? Straight that line is.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Here we go. So yeah, this was a tunnel, right? I just want to say something about this tunnel. This tunnel was built in the late 1800s because, here he goes. Look at him go. Apparently this was meant to be built for cart ruts and horse and cart. But because of the gradient of the because it goes down at an angle, they said they couldn't use it no more. They said they can't use it. So I thought that's just an excuse. This is obviously part of this golden layer complex, and this is obviously a tunnel for the transport to go through. And when you look at certain parts of it, look at this. Like, we're told this is all like, this is natural. I mean, this to me looks like blocks to me. Yeah, that was it, Ben, really. That was it. So that was the last lot of pictures I wanted to show you, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's very telling.
It's incredible, though. Like, it's... Sorry, man.
No, don't be. It is incredible. Yeah, I mean, it's just again, the first chat we did with each other, the kind of the catchphrase was what lies beneath. And in that video we did, I talked about how, for the last 100 years or so, 80 years, 100 years, they really turned the dial up on space and the sky and what's beyond the
Yeah,
sky.
yeah.
And
Focus on that.
for me, again, there's still a lot to learn there, and there's a lot of truths to uncover. But I think the real juice is below our feet, and
Hmm.
that was why I wanted to title it "What Lies Beneath." And I think some of my favorite articles have been the buried building cave type of articles.
Hmm.
And seeing your work, you're like you're like that guy who's bridging the gap. He's exploring the places that are like in the middle,
Hmm.
below. They're just not buried enough that you can still go to them, and they're not above the ground enough that you can. It's kind of like you're in this perfect middle ground where you can see two different worlds colliding essentially. And
Hmm.
that video or the pictures you just shared, for me, really summarize kind of the whole, um, kind of the period of at the end of the sentence for a lot of what you do and what I do from a, obviously from a little bit of a different perspective. You have that really old, um, in my opinion, kind of what looks like to be a melted building or something similar to it, and then you have all the brickwork blocking the entrances and showing, because inside of that, I'm sure that tunnel looks perfect, just like that one you just showed. The
Yeah,
outside of it is so deformed and grotesque, but I'm sure it didn't look like that originally.
it'd have been a
And
masterpiece.
yeah, and they're building that incredibly large building on top of it. It's pretty obvious that, you're dealing with some incredibly old, um, strong structure. Because if it
From
was,
period.
yeah, if it was just simply sandstone, they would have just removed it to build that building. You wouldn't invest millions and millions and millions of dollars if you didn't have the geological research to show that this is incredibly strong and will last another. I mean, who knows how old that is? That's hundreds of years old.
Well, yeah, it's got to be one of the most primitive parts of Nottingham.
Good
And everything's
verbiage.
based around it and built on top of it. So,
Primitive. Yeah, primitive is the perfect word. And primitive, and I hope for our listeners that have been following along, primitive is a word that unfortunately seems to be a bit demeaning, but when you have the eyes to see and you start to realize that primitive actually is an inverted. Primitive is more advanced. It's not only more advanced because the construction is more advanced, but it's simpler and less complicated. And like we were discussing about the blocks and the geopolymer, using the materials at hand is the only way any of these things make sense to me. We're not
mhm,
shipping in cedars from 1,000 miles away. We're not shipping in stone from 600 miles away or 100 miles away. We're building with what we have on hand. And the cement and geopolymer obviously creates an environment for that to be even more, realistic, because you're just gonna dig the stuff up out of the dirt, you know.
spot
And
on, mate. It's
yeah, with
absolutely spot on.
you have water, and you build near a place with good water and good dirt, good gravel, which and sand, which isn't hard to find. I mean, we're talking about, England's a giant island essentially. There's sand, as you know, there's sand everywhere, especially when you go down deep enough.
And then you need bones, didn't you?
Yeah, and you just you
Bones, mate.
and how many um layers where you don't even need to grind up the bone. I mean, I
Yeah.
know that all over England, the White Cliffs, all these places where they've shown these chalky, um layers that are just perfect for making amazing cement. I mean, you don't even need to grind it up. You don't even have to put in the labor. And the waterways are so ancient there, as we were discussing, that even if you had to transport some materials, it would be very easy to do. We're not shipping 100-ton blocks.
Yeah.
We're just shipping the stuff,
Manageable sizing.
manageable materials to create the blocks on site.
Yeah. And that's how that makes sense, doesn't it? And whether it's right or wrong, that's an explanation. Some other theories can't even explain it. They leave it to the mystery of things, you know, like they leave it to aliens or technology that you can't even describe.
Yeah.
So I just urge people to explore other routes instead of going down what I call trapdoors.
Yeah.
Because like, I believe the more people that look at things, I think the quicker you get to answers, and especially if you're working together, you know, and you're putting ideas together. I find that works out. That is just like that's superior, in my opinion, to doing it on your own.
I agree. Yeah, because I mean, efficiency is something that always rings true for me, especially when we talk about primitive. These people were far more efficient. And again, you know, I've said this a million times, and I apologize for being a broken record, but Occam's razor really, the idea of the simplest method, the simplest answer, often being the right one. Um, I think the things you're showing just keep strengthening that. And yeah,
Cheers,
it's
mate.
amazing. It really is. And where you just you were drawn to what you're doing, and you live in a perfect area because you couldn't do what you do here where I live. You just couldn't. It's buried. It's all buried below ground. It's just there's no way, and you can just wander into all these cities where there's so much history. But then you're showing that these buildings are hundreds of years old, but look what they're sitting on.
Yeah.
You know, they're sitting on things that we don't even have a idea how old they are. You know, again, the cyclopean phrase again that it seems to me like a different civilization. I mean, what do you think?
I believe it is a different civilization, 100%. My opinion on that goes a lot deeper, and it's probably not relevant to this, but I'll just give a little insight. I believe that the races that have been on this planet are probably like some sort of experimental something. That's what it seems like in some sort of closed environment. That's all I can think of. But again, it's not for this show. That's completely different, and it'll probably open up a whole tin of worms. And I don't want anyone to forget what we've been talking about here. But
Yeah,
I believe there's been multiple different races or beings here
I agree.
going
Yeah,
back a long time.
yeah, and um, yeah. Since you said multiples, I'm gonna finish this off with maybe one more article that talks exactly about that.
That
And
was good, eh? That was quite synchronized
here,
well.
is this it? Mongolian. Okay, here we go. So, since you mentioned multiples, and I agree
Mm-hmm.
with you completely, the records, the hidden records, strengthen that idea as well. Prehistoric city, um, 1913, discovering Mexico of ruins of a third city below two others. Absolute Mongolian remains, the most ancient civilization of Mexico and Peru, the city of Atumbia, centuries before the Aztecs, Toltecs, even before Babylon or Nineveh. Discovery in Mexico of ruins of a third city below two others. A sensation has been created in British scientific circles by advices received from Sir Martin Conway, Professor William Niven, and Senior Rahman Minna of the discovery of absolute Mongolian remains only a couple hours' walk from the city of Mexico, thereby confirming the hypothesis that has long been held that the most ancient civilization of Mexico and Peru, preceding that of the Toltecs and the Aztecs, was of Mongolian origin. Close to and partly beneath the ruins of the ancient city of Tehuacan, I'm going to mess that up, sorry, about nine.
Tiwanaku. Oh no, sorry. Oh,
No, it's not Tiwanaku, but it's
yeah,
similar.
sorry, mate. Sorry.
No, it's all good. The really old Mexico names I just destroy. About 19 miles northeast of the city of Mexico, the scientists uncovered the still more ancient city of Atumbia, which flourished with a wondrous civilization centuries before the Aztecs or the Toltecs rose to power, possibly even before Babylon and Nineveh swayed the destinies of Western Asia. With the financial assistance of the Mexican government, the expedition began the removal of a 6-foot layer of earth, representing the dust and detritus of more than 20 centuries. They soon This soon brought into view many evidences of a vast and populous city of a very high order of civilization. Chief among these was a great pyramid. So this is a pyramid below the ground level. It is 700 feet square at the base, and its apex 187 feet high. While many of the giant blocks of stone in its massive walls must have required extraordinary engineering skill to handle, this pyramid also has its riddle. For the access of the main gallery is coincidental with the magnetic meridian. So that's insane. So this pyramid is built along the magnetic meridian.
Yeah.
Near the pyramid was found another remarkable building called the Casa Pintata, or Painted House. On the ground floor are 6 rooms with smoothly polished floors of white cement. The walls, which are composed of clay mixed with fragments of stone, are thickest at the base and slope slightly upward. They are also smoothly finished with a thin coating of plaster. It's just lining up with a lot of what you've been showing, I think. So many similar constructions. And it's buried below ground, of course, which is painted Indian red. On these walls are paintings representing human beings in elaborate garments and headdresses. The colors used in the paintings are green, red, pink, orange, and brown. The workmanship is of a high order, the figures being boldly drawn and carefully colored. So give me a sec as I keep going here. They came to the greatest discovery of all. While excavating near the base of the Great Pyramid, Professor Niven unearthed the remains of yet a third civilization beneath the ruins of ancient tombs, making 3 great cities of lost and forgotten race, but one above the other. In what appears to have been a tomb of the lowest city, whose age so far defies calculation, Professor Niven found the clay image of a Chinaman, with oblique eye slits, padded coat, flowing trousers, and slippers. Only the queue was lacking to make a complete portrait of a Mandarin of the recently defunct Chinese Empire. It should be remembered, however, that the Chinese did not adopt the queue until after they had been conquered by the Tartar hordes of the north. The image is about 7 inches in length, and where the arms are broken, the edges of the clay show red and friable in the center. The outer surface of the clay, however, is of a granite hardness, and is only with the greatest difficulty that it can be chipped with a hammer. In the ears are huge rings, and on the head is a skull cap with a small button in the center, precisely like that worn by the modern Mandarin. The coat, which is loose and of the type still worn by the older Chinese, is fastened with a frog and a button, and on the breast is a circular plate evidently once covered with a thin layer of beaten gold, but worn bare by the contact with the earth of unknown centuries. So yeah, just wanted to end with that one because
that's phenomenal, mate.
Even in a place like Mexico, where people get so used to seeing these pyramids, and they're like, "Look how ancient and advanced they are," and then you find out that there's 2 other civilizations below, and the construction gets more advanced, and the block work gets more advanced, the cement gets more advanced, the bricks get bigger and bigger, and everything gets bigger.
It's getting smaller and deteriorating the quality as we move forward.
Exactly.
That's what it is, and it's where we're going to be in 100 years. Where we're going to be. What is going to be taught in 100 years? It's just going to be a completely different world.
I hope it is. Yeah, I hope we're making the turn, and these things, people like you and people like me and other people in this community that really enjoy.
Longo's
yeah,
a big one in the game, isn't he?
Digging down deep, and we all kind of play our own little chess pieces in the game.
We're all different pieces of the puzzle. Like some puzzles, some pieces of the puzzle can go together well, and some might not. But we're all different pieces of the puzzle.
100%.
I'll tell you one other person as well. Harmonic Soul. I don't know if she's still in the group chat, but she's had some wicked videos lately, looking at the old world stuff, buried structures and water sources and things like that. So that's another woman or one to look out for as well. I'm going up to their neck of the woods at the weekend, and I think we're going to go and film something. So watch out for that one, guys. That'd be an interesting little episode.
Yeah.
One other thing, I just want there's like 430 people here. If you haven't subscribed to Ben already, do you mind if you go and do it? It only takes a second. Like you can see how top notch and quality the material he's bringing. So if you
Thanks,
don't
Paul.
mind,
That means a lot.
Yeah, if you don't mind, like give him a good old subscribe, because I think the geezer's going somewhere. So
yeah, and yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, a lot of your listeners have been so amazing, and the talks we've had, the feedback's been incredible, and I know this won't be the last time we get together, and we always have so much to share and so much in common. I mean, I've only shared, for those of you who aren't familiar with me, predominantly the majority of my work has been posted on Twitter, mostly just because I decided that I should publicize a lot of this stuff that because I've been clipping these articles for almost 5 years now, 4.5 years, 5 years, and I've posted probably 3,500 now, and that's not even 10% of what I've clipped in 5 years. And yeah, so there's always something new. I try to post every day, and watching your videos and reading my articles, there's just so many great overlays that I
totally agree.
yeah,
Totally
you
agree.
reached out, on a Carimo video, and I'm grateful you did. And yeah, yeah, it's been a great experience, and I appreciate all your listeners a lot. They've been fantastic, and I'm appreciate you coming on. It's been huge. It means a lot. So
Yeah, no, thank you, mate, for having me, mate. I really appreciate it, and I really do. I don't want to sound like I'm licking your whatever, but I really do enjoy our conversation. No, I do, mate. I do. I think
I do too.
when credit's credit, I'll give credit when credit's due, mate, and I really do enjoy it. So I look forward to the next one, mate. And in between them, we're both going to be gathering more, shall we say, nuggets.
Always, yeah.
So you know what I mean. So it's been a pleasure, Ben, mate. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine, Paul. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in. And yeah, if this is your first time seeing a show with me with Paul, I just started my own series, YouTube series, and this is episode 4. So I knew I wanted to get Paul on as early as I could because there's just too many good overlaps. And yeah, check out my other 3 episodes. If this was entertaining, you'll love the first 3. They're all kind of in a similar sphere of information. And yeah, thanks again for being here, Paul. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. It means a lot. And post your comments on me and Paul's channels, and throw out any questions or ideas or things that you notice or things you want us to look at. And the next time we do this, Paul, I'd love to bring some of those comments and things,
100%.
and and work them into the discussion. Maybe take some live questions or something like
Mate,
that.
that's a wicked idea, mate. Yeah, wicked idea.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to thank Colleen and the other person that did donate earlier. I couldn't find it as I went back. I don't know why it didn't come up highlighted, but if you're still there, thank you very much. Double salute to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and for people like me and you, that this is we spend a ton of our lives doing stuff like this, and the donations, man. I mean, obviously, I just started my journey, but just the kind words and all and gestures mean so much, and yeah, we're dedicating as much of our free time as we can to this, and your enjoyment
I've
and
dedicated
appreciation.
my life, mate. I've
Yeah,
dedicated my life to it now, mate.
yeah,
I'm in England. We got a saying, I am balls deep now, mate. I
yeah,
am balls deep.
yeah, yeah, and I'm there with you too. So yeah, but yeah, so thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And Paul, mostly, thank you so much for being here and joining me. And have a wonderful day. And
Yeah, you too,
everybody,
guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
yeah, and everybody out there for tuning in. 400 over 400 people. That was fantastic. So thanks again. Bye, guys.
Ta-da.